I do not think so, especially with President Trump and JDVance, those rational thinkers in the White House. I'm actually kind of optimistic. From a China and the Americans' perspective, I think the best consensus they could achieve is that America will just agree that Taiwan is part of the China's sphere of influence, while China will also, agree with Americans' demands on some of their own sphere of influence. I think that's a win-win situation for both of us. Regarding Taiwan, I honestly think both people on the island of Taiwan and their government should come to the realization that they are just a mere island 100 miles away from the mainland China. Their island cannot sustain itself with those slogans like democracy and human rights. The world has changed. They should come to the realization of that. I think they should just open their eyes and see around the world right now. Okay, think about this. Back in the 1990s, the GDP of Taiwan, the Republic of China, was 40% compared with that of mainland China. Today, that number drops down all the way to the 4%, right? So the relative power balance has changed already. Even though the rhetoric of the mainland Chinese government is still very peaceful, it's still very nice toward Taiwan, but I do think those people on the island should come to realize that, the weight of power balance has changed already long ago. I think they somehow overestimated, and I do think people in Taiwan just feel too self-entitled. I think because since the 1980s and 90s, the mainland China government just gave them too much preferential policies without having any reciprocal actions. So they should think about this. What would happen if one day the government on mainland China lost the patience? If the people on the mainland China lose the patience, what's going to happen to them? And what's going to happen if the White House is rational enough to realize that there is no way for the U.S. military to intervene in the Taiwan Strait without incur significant and unacceptable damage on the U.S. military itself? I think the whole semiconductor hoax is also an inflated scam. Not a scam, but the importance of semiconductor is also inflated. China is able to build its own chips right now as well. Maybe not as good as what the TSMC could do. But I do believe the Chinese tech and Chinese manufacturing capacity is able to sustain its own needs. So I do not think the semiconductor industry possesses that much significance in terms of conflict with Taiwan or the U.S. strategic calculation about it. To some extent, I like those people. The reason being, I think these people, they are not pretending anymore. The message which they are conveying to the outside world is that they are not part of China, nor do they have any ethnic or special connection with mainland China, which is good. It's good that in this world that everyone knows your competitor or your counterpart's true intentions, which is good. But the suggestion which I will offer to those leaders in Taiwan right now is that they really have to think through what's their ultimate objective. Even though your ultimate objective is so-called Taiwan independence, but what's the benefit you could grab out of it? And what's the cost of it? At the end of the day, if the World War III is coming in a couple years or in the near future, who is able to defend Taiwan? And given the location of Taiwan, which, as I said, is only 100 miles away from the coast of mainland China, what's going to happen then? Maybe, I think by the time that the government on Taiwan will even realize that becoming part of China is their best strategic option among all the other ones. Obviously, it's not. Come on, I think the total population of Taiwan right now is 23 million. And mainland China is just 50 times more than that, 60 times actually. And again, so-called procedural democracy never applied to the Sinic civilization, at least not in a large scale. The Chinese civilization has spanned over 3,000 to 5,000 years. We never had a system like that, yet we still built a tremendous civilization. And even today, China is thriving as well. So I think the idea proposed by the late Chiang, the junior, is a mere illusion at the best. First of all, there's a huge difference between the three people principle proposed, which I do think the Chinese Communist Party also agree with and also abide by, versus the pure procedural democracy. these things are not equal. Like, three people's principle states the objective of the government is to serve the people, is to share the wealth, share the resources, share the well-being to all the people. But the procedural democracy is only a mere form of choosing who will become the leaders of the people. So three people's principle, I think, applies to mainland China very well, while the procedural democracy does not. So I guess our Mr. Chiang the Jr. should realize that there is a form of selecting the leader versus the objective of the leader.